thousands of Russian tanks have been recorded as lost on the battlefields of Ukraine. But the most important part is not only the number destroyed. It is the way many of them are being pulled into traps before they can create a real breakthrough. During Rasputitsa, the mud season in Ukraine, the ground does not need to destroy a tank by itself. It only needs to force heavy armored columns onto narrow roads, where Ukrainian drones can already guess where they will appear. From the ground, that road may look like the safest path through wet fields and broken farmland. From the sky, it looks like a target corridor drawn across the battlefield. One mine can break the track of the lead vehicle. One FPV drone can dive into the engine deck or the top of the turret. Then artillery or HIMARS can strike the vehicles trapped behind it. Within minutes, a formation built for speed and shock can turn into a line of fixed targets. That is what makes this story different. Ukraine is not only using drones to hit tanks. It is using mud, mines, drones, and long-range fire as one connected hunting system. The real danger is not just that Russian armor is being destroyed. The deeper question is whether any modern army can still rely on heavy mechanized assaults when it no longer controls the road beneath it or the sky above it. Rasputitsa is the muddy season that hits Ukraine and parts of Eastern Europe when thawing snow, rain, and soft soil turn open ground into a heavy trap. This season does not destroy a tank by itself, but it can take away the one thing that makes armor dangerous: movement. On the Eastern Front, that danger begins before the first shot is fired. A Russian armored column rolls toward a forward route, and from inside the lead vehicle, the road looks like the only safe choice. The fields on both sides look open, but the surface is soft, wet, and too weak for machines that weigh dozens of tons. The crew may still trust the tank. The engine has power, the armor is thick, and the gun can hit hard. But none of that matters if the vehicle cannot choose where to go. The mud turns the ground into a quiet barrier, and once that barrier appears, the column is no longer moving through free terrain. It is moving through a lane that the enemy can study, mark, and wait for. This is where the trap starts to form. A tank commander may want to leave the road, spread out, or cut across a field to avoid danger. Yet the ground itself closes those options. If the vehicle turns too far, the tracks can sink. If the driver pushes harder, the tank may dig itself deeper. If the column tries to fan out, support vehicles and infantry carriers may get stuck before reaching the fight. So the convoy stays on the road, and that decision changes the entire battle. A narrow village route, a forest path, a bridge approach, or a strip of hard ground between muddy fields becomes a choke point. The vehicles must pass through it one by one, and every delay makes the formation easier to read from above. What looks like a simple movement problem from the ground becomes a targeting pattern from the sky. Ukrainian drone teams do not need to see every part of the battlefield at once. They only need to watch the places where heavy armor has no better choice. A road bend near a tree line, a dry track beside a flooded field, or a crossing near a small bridge can become more important than the open ground around it. If Russian vehicles keep using the same route, the pattern becomes clearer with each movement. The result is a battlefield where mud becomes part of the Ukrainian sensor network. It does not send a signal, and it does not guide a weapon, but it limits Russian decisions in a way that helps the defenders. Once the route is known, the timing can be watched. Once the timing is watched, the column can be held under observation before it reaches the line of contact. This is why the old image of armor as a fast steel fist no longer tells the whole story. A tank remains powerful when it can move, change direction, and use shock to break a defense. When it is forced into a narrow road under drone coverage, that strength begins to turn against it. The size, weight, and noise that once made the column impressive now make it easier to detect and track. At that moment, the battle is no longer decided only by armor thickness or gun range. It is decided by who controls the route, who sees the movement first, and who can prepare the next step. Once the road becomes predictable, Ukraine can begin turning that road into a prepared kill zone with drones, mines, and waiting fire. Ukraine does not need to wait until a Russian armored column reaches the front line to begin the fight. The trap often starts earlier when drones rise above the roads, tree lines, fields, and damaged villages that heavy vehicles must cross. From that height, the battlefield becomes a map of habits. A route used once may be noted. A route used twice may be watched. A route used again can become the center of an ambush. The first job of the drone is not always to strike. Its first job is to understand movement. It watches where Russian vehicles slow down, where they turn, where they avoid soft ground, and where the road forces them into a narrow path. A tank crew may see only mud on both sides, but a drone operator sees a pattern forming. That pattern becomes valuable because armor cannot hide its weight, sound, dust, and track marks for long. Once the route is clear, Ukraine can prepare the next layer. Mines can be placed along the approaches that Russian vehicles are most likely to use, while artillery crews can wait for confirmed movement instead of firing blindly. In some cases, drones can support remote mining or help identify the exact ground where a mine will matter most. The point is not to cover every road. The point is to close the one road that the enemy has already been forced to choose. This changes the meaning of a minefield. It is no longer just a silent danger sitting in the soil. It becomes part of a wider system that has eyes above it. If the lead tank enters the marked path and hits a mine, the blast is only the opening move. The broken track, the sudden stop, and the smoke rising from the road tell Ukrainian operators that the column has reached the prepared point. From the Russian side, the next seconds are critical. The lead vehicle is damaged, and the road ahead is blocked. The driver behind it cannot simply pull out into the field because the mud may expose it to another mine. Reversing is also difficult because the vehicles behind are still moving forward, and the whole formation is now losing order. What looked like a route becomes a corridor with no clean exit. This is where the pressure grows fast. If the column stops, drones can hold the position and guide fire. If it tries to move around the damaged vehicle, the soft ground can trap another machine. If crews wait for a recovery vehicle, that vehicle becomes another large target in the same observed zone. Each option gives Ukraine more time, and time is dangerous when cameras are already overhead. The strength of this method is that every part supports the next. The drone finds the route. The mine forces the halt. The halt creates a fixed target. Then FPV drones, bomber drones, artillery, or HIMARS can strike with greater confidence. The vehicles are no longer racing through uncertain ground. They are trapped in a place where their movement has been slowed, their spacing has collapsed, and their choices have become visible. This is why terrain matters so much in the current phase of the war. Ukraine is not only defending a line on the map, it is shaping how Russian forces are allowed to approach that line. A road, a bridge, a dry track, or a gap between muddy fields can become more than a route. It can become the place where a column is stopped, marked, and broken. The real lesson is simple but severe. Drones see the column before contact. Mines force it to stop at the worst possible point. Precision fire then turns that stopped position into a kill zone. The collapse begins when the lead tank hits a mine on a narrow road between two muddy fields. The blast tears into the track, the tank twists across the lane, and smoke rises from the column. What looked like a clear path seconds earlier becomes a steel barrier that blocks every vehicle behind it. That first tank is not just another machine in the formation. It sets the speed, marks the safe path, and gives the rest of the column a point to follow. When it stops, the vehicles behind it lose their rhythm at once. The second tank brakes hard. The infantry carrier behind it closes the distance. The support truck farther back slows too late, and the line begins to tighten. Inside the column, the situation becomes confused fast. Drivers can see smoke ahead, but they cannot see the full picture. Commanders hear several voices on the radio, and each crew waits for instructions before making a move that could kill them. The field on both sides looks wide, yet the mud makes it dangerous for any heavy vehicle to leave the hard surface. This is the point where control starts to break. The second tank cannot push around the wreck without risking the soft ground. The rear vehicles cannot reverse cleanly because the road is crowded. Staying in place gives Ukrainian drones more time to circle above. None of these choices restores momentum. Each one gives the defenders a clearer target. From the Ukrainian side, the damaged lead tank becomes a marker on the battlefield. Drone operators no longer have to follow a moving formation. They now have a fixed point, a blocked road, and a cluster of vehicles forming behind it. The column that was supposed to move as one hard strike is turning into a line of machines with limited space and no clean exit. The recovery vehicle then faces the most dangerous task. Its crew must move forward through the same watched road and stop close to the disabled tank. That makes it slow, exposed, and easy to identify from above. Its purpose is to pull the lead tank away and reopen the lane, but the attempt itself creates another valuable target. If that recovery vehicle is hit, the assault loses even more time. The infantry inside the carriers is trapped in a different kind of danger. Staying inside keeps them behind armor, but the vehicles are no longer moving fast enough to feel safe. When soldiers climb out, they step into open ground that drones can watch from above. Running toward the tree line may look like survival from the road, but that movement can be tracked to cover. As minutes pass, the formation stops acting like a single force. One crew waits. Another tries to edge backward. A commander calls for movement, but the route ahead is still blocked. The longer the delay lasts, the more useful the target becomes for Ukrainian fire control. Artillery crews receive steadier coordinates, while bomber drones and FPV teams choose weak points with less pressure. This is why one broken track can become the first step in a larger collapse. The loss is not limited to the lead tank. The real damage is the loss of speed, spacing, command, and escape. A mechanized column is built to shock a defense through movement, but once that movement dies under drone observation, it becomes a trapped target set. Every minute in that position drains Russia's armored force, trained crews, and confidence in direct assault. The battle does not end when the column stops. In many cases, that is when the most expensive part begins for Russia, because every trapped tank becomes a target that costs far more to replace than the drone sent to destroy it. After the lead tank is disabled and the road is blocked, a Ukrainian FPV drone can move in with a very different purpose from artillery. It does not need to hit the strongest armor at the front. It can come low along the side of the road, rise over the damaged vehicle, then dive toward the thinner top armor, the engine deck, the rear section, or the gaps around added cage protection. This is where the cost of the war becomes brutal. A tank can cost millions of dollars, and it also carries a trained crew, fuel, spare parts, and months of repair work behind it. A small FPV drone may cost only hundreds or a few $1,000s, yet if it hits the right point, it can turn that heavy machine into dead weight on the road. The first strike may not always destroy the tank completely. It may damage the engine, start a fire, break optics, or force the crew to abandon the vehicle. But that is already enough to change the fight. A tank that cannot move is no longer a breakthrough weapon. It becomes a steel obstacle, a rescue problem, and another reason for the column behind it to stay under Ukrainian observation. If the tank remains intact after the first hit, another drone can be sent in. The second drone can aim at a different point, often where heat, smoke, or damage has already opened a weakness. This repeated pressure is what makes FPV warfare so hard to absorb. Russia is not only losing vehicles to single perfect strikes. It is facing a method where cheap weapons can be used again until the target finally fails. The danger becomes even greater with many Russian tank designs. The T-72, T-80, and T-90 families use an automatic loading system with ammunition stored in a carousel under the turret. This design helps keep the tank lower and reduces the crew size, but it creates a serious risk when the fighting compartment is penetrated. If an FPV drone hits the turret roof and the blast reaches the ammunition area, the result can be catastrophic. The shells inside may cook off in a chain reaction, and the pressure inside the hull has almost nowhere safe to go. That is when the turret can be blown upward in the violent effect often called the jack-in-the-box. For the crew, this kind of explosion leaves almost no time to react. For the Russian army, the loss goes beyond one vehicle. It means another trained crew gone, another tank removed from the order of battle, and another repair burden added to a system already under pressure. This is why the wider numbers matter, even without turning the story into a table of statistics. Russia has lost thousands of tanks by visually confirmed counts and Western military assessments, but the real issue is not only the total. The deeper problem is the quality being drained over time. Better tanks, experienced crews, and ready spare parts are harder to replace than old hulls pulled from storage. Russia can still repair vehicles, restart older machines, and produce new armor. That point matters because the Russian tank force has not disappeared. But the battlefield is changing the price of using it. Every failed assault forces Moscow to spend expensive machines against cheap drones, and that exchange favors the side that can keep sending small precision weapons into the same kill zone. The pressure from mines and drones is forcing Russia to change how assaults move forward, and the clearest sign is the reduced role of large armored pushes in many direct attacks. When a tank column becomes too easy to see, too expensive to lose, and too hard to recover, commanders start looking for smaller shapes on the battlefield. That is why more Russian movements now appear as scattered infantry, motorcycle teams, ATV groups, and light transport moving through broken ground. Near places like Pokrovsk, this shift can be seen in the rhythm of the fight. Instead of one heavy column trying to punch through a route, small groups move in short bursts between tree lines, ruined houses, and damaged roads. A motorcycle team may cross an exposed strip quickly, then stop near cover. A few soldiers may follow on foot, carrying ammunition, radios, and basic supplies. The goal is simple: reduce the target size and avoid giving Ukrainian drone operators one large formation to strike. But this does not make the battlefield safe. It only changes who carries the risk. A tank may be harder to replace, but a soldier on foot has almost no protection once a drone finds him. A motorcycle can move fast, but it cannot absorb fragments, blast, or a direct hit. An ATV can cross narrow ground, but once it slows near a ditch, road bend, or damaged building, it becomes just another moving point on a drone screen. This creates a different kind of attrition. The loss is no longer always a burning tank on a road. It can be a two-man team caught while crossing open ground. It can be a small supply run, stopped before reaching the front. It can be a group hiding inside a damaged house while a drone waits outside the entrance. The attack becomes smaller in size, but the danger becomes more personal and constant. Ukrainian drones around contested areas do not only watch armored vehicles. They watch paths used by infantry, the edges of forest belts, gaps between buildings, and the small roads that carry water, food, ammunition, and batteries. A soldier who pauses too long can be marked. A motorcycle that returns along the same route can be followed. A light vehicle that tries to deliver supplies can reveal the position of the unit waiting for it. Dispersion also weakens command. When Russian assault groups spread out to avoid being hit together, they become harder to control. Leaders cannot stand in the open to guide movement for long. Radios may be used carefully because electronic signals can attract attention. If one group is pinned down, another may not know whether to advance, wait, or pull back. The assault then turns into separate movements instead of one coordinated push. This is the real meaning of demechanization in this phase of the war. Russia still has tanks, and those tanks still matter when used with protection and planning. But under constant drone pressure, many attacks are pushed back toward men, motorcycles, and lighter vehicles because heavy armor has become too visible in predictable routes. Yet this kill chain is not only a Russian problem. The same battlefield logic can punish any force that moves through a watched route without mine clearing, electronic warfare, counter-drone cover, and good reconnaissance. The larger lesson is clear. Tanks are not disappearing from war, but they can no longer act as lonely spearheads in a drone-controlled battlefield. Armor now needs scouts above it, engineers ahead of it, jammers around it, and fire support ready to suppress threats before the column enters the trap. Without that full system, even the strongest vehicle can become just another target waiting on a road. The most important lesson from this battlefield is not that mud defeated Russian tanks. A modern armored force can still be powerful on paper, but it can collapse fast when the road, the sky, and the timing are controlled by the enemy. The mud season forces heavy vehicles onto narrow routes. Ukrainian drones detect those routes from above. Mines stop the lead vehicle at the worst possible moment. That chain turns movement into danger. A tank column built for speed and shock can suddenly become a fixed target set, and every minute it remains in place gives the defender more time to choose the next strike. But this does not mean the tank is finished. Tanks still matter when they are protected. The real problem is the old way of using armor, where large columns move down predictable roads and trust weight, armor, and momentum to solve the fight. That model is now under heavy pressure in Ukraine. The next phase may become even more difficult. Russia may keep shifting toward infantry, motorcycles, ATVs, and small assault groups to reduce vehicle losses. The question is still open. Which side will adapt faster to a battlefield where survival depends less on armor thickness and more on who controls visibility, routes, and timing? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, share it with others who follow modern warfare, and subscribe to Military Force for more clear analysis on the battles, weapons, and politics shaping today's wars.